Hey everybody, welcome back to the podcast. Today on the Metrology Today Podcast, I have Chuck Ellis from NAPT and Howard Zion from Transcat, but also now a part of NAPT. So I'm excited to have both of them on. Now, a real brief introduction on both of them. Now, as for Charles Ellis, or Chuck Ellis, he's with NAPT, or National Association for Proficiency Testing. And I hear him throughout the episode calling it NAPT, so that's what I started calling it as well. Now, Mr. Ellis has over 40 years of technical experience in the administration and maintenance of test equipment. Now, he's going to talk a little bit about his Army career, but he was an Army officer, first serving as a calibration technician and then as an electronic support platoon leader. Now, he has also formal auditor training 2 and 4 ISO 9000, ISO 17025, ISO 13528, ISO 17043 standards. He's performed numerous assessments to ISO 17025 for several accreditation bodies in the United States and currently serves on several technical committees related to test and measurement community. And of course, in his last position, because you'll notice he states numerous times in this episode that he is retired, but in his last position, he was responsible for the development, growth, and operations of a nonprofit association that provides administration and technical support to us in Cal Labs in the test and measurement communities for interlab comparisons and proficiency tests. And he's largely responsible for NAPT becoming the largest metrology proficiency testing provider in North America. So extremely excited to have him on. He has numerous honors and awards. Beyond the military service, he is the recipient of the Andrew J. Woodington Award, which also Howard Zion got for professionalism in metrology, issued by the Measurement Science Conference. Which brings me to Mr. Howard Zion, who is a Senior Director of Service Application Engineering for Transcat. Now, if you don't know Transcat, you're living under a rock in our industry. They're one of the largest, they're publicly owned calibration company, and I think I don't know the exact sizes, but an extremely large calibration company with many locations. He holds a BS in Engineering and Technology, an MS in Industrial Engineering and Management Systems from the University of Central Florida. And Mr. Zion is a recipient of also the Woodington Award for professionalism in metrology, presented in the 2019 Measurement Science Conference at the Disneyland Hotel in Anaheim. Howard has collected a wealth of knowledge in many disciplines during the span of his 41 years in metrology and has been employed with the Air Force, as he'll talk about in the beginning, Lockheed Martin, NASA at the Kennedy Space Center, which a lot of those showing up lately in our episodes. Also, Howard Zion performs additional duties in various communities and is serving or has previously served in the following roles: Vice Chairman of the Board of Directors for NAPT or NAPT, and that's why these two gentlemen are talking to us today. 4 NCSLI working groups: the 151 Healthcare, 163.1 Metrology Descriptions, 164.1 Education, and 171 Cal System Resources. Advisory board at the University of North Carolina at Charlotte, and we do talk about that here today, and sponsor for engineering capstone projects at the Rochester Institute of Technology. And of course, author of many white papers. If you're someone into education like me, I come across Howard Zion papers and presentations all the time in my research. It was a great pleasure to have both of them on the show. And today we're mostly talking about NAPT. We do talk about a little bit about Transcat in there, but I would love to have both of them back on separately because there's just so much to talk about with both of them. But without further ado, let's get on with the show with Chuck and Howard. Thank you for listening. Well, welcome to another great episode of the Metrology Today podcast. Today I have Howard and Chuck on. Obviously, I have an intro that I put in. I'll record beforehand. So welcome to the podcast, both of you. And it might not look like it on the camera right now, but they're in the same room. It's just we can't get the camera to stop zooming in on Chuck. Isn't that right, Chuck?
Well, we know who the most important person in the room is.
Like I said, it's all about Chuck.
Well,
So
I'm
naturally,
the older one, that's why.
that must be it. Now, gentlemen, in the beginning of our podcast, we usually like the guests to introduce themselves, give us a little background of their metrology path, right? How'd you get into this crazy field? Because it's not a natural field to get into most of the time. So, if you don't mind, Chuck, do you want to go ahead and introduce yourself and talk about how you got into metrology?
Well, it's kind of a very long story. You can buy my book. I wrote a book about it, how I got into it, kind of weird, but the short version is I didn't want to go home. I was in college, and as a lot of college students do, we party too much, do all those things when we're young, did drink too much, did a little too much of those things back in the late 70s. And I did not want to go back home. So instead, I joined the Army. And you take those tests, and I kind of scored high on the test and ended up going to that wonderful PMAL program. And after the PMAL program, did the time on the bench and learned the trade. And that's how I got introduced into metrology. Spent a few years on the bench, had a great warrant officer that made us understand the measurement. Spent a lot of time doing 6 months doing one dimension, and went over and did scopes, and then did gauge blocks and torque wrenches. It was just a wonderful experience. And then after quite a few years sitting on the bench, had this captain that said, I think we want to make you an officer. So I went off and became what they call a 90-day Wonder Boy. So that's a different part of the story, but that's how I became introduced into this business, and did that for quite a few years. And then the next time on the podcast, we'll talk how I got out of the Army, and then how we got started in proficiency testing, but we'll get into proficiency testing in a minute or two. But that explains how I got into metrology.
Well, and that's the hard thing having both of you on for the first time at the same time is there's so much to talk to both of you about. So we have to kind of keep it brief on both, but definitely fascinated. How about you, Howard? How'd you get into this wild field?
So, as many people do, through the military, right? And I had lost my father when I was young. I was 12 years old. And by the time I got to 18 years old and graduated high school, I wasn't sure what I wanted to do with my life. Thought I wanted to go into woodworking. I did an apprenticeship. Nope, that's not what I wanted. That was more of a hobby. Had a brother-in-law who was in the Army that went over to Air Force as a aircraft mechanic, was telling me all about Air Force opportunities, and got me to go take the ASVAB. I scored very high in electronics. Don't know how I did that. I'd taken all the trade courses in high school, right? But I did well in math. Always did well in math and science. So I scored high in electronics, and they said, "Hey, come on in. We'd love to have you." Went in open electronics when I went down to the San Antonio, the basic training for the Air Force.
Right.
And my top pick was something like computers. I forget my second one. The third one was this PMAL thing. And it's like precision measurement. What the heck is that? I don't care about that, but it's in Denver. Hey, I want to go to Denver. I'm from Chicago. I see flatland all the time. I want to go see some mountains, right?
Yeah, nice.
That's what drew me into picking that in my field. And he had also said that's probably anything with a long school is probably a good selection, right? So that's how I ended up in precision measurement equipment.
Wow.
Spent 4 years in the Air Force. Didn't really go anywhere. As a single airman, usually go overseas. Ended up staying at Whiteman Air Force Base right in the middle of the country in Kansas City area. Met my wife there, and then off I went to work for, after I got out of the Air Force, I went to work for Martin Marietta, which then became Lockheed Martin in Orlando. Did that for 4 years, and then that was the end of the Cold War, believe it or not. There were a lot of companies being bought out or merging. Wasn't sure where that was going to go. They were doing voluntary layoffs, and I thought, I don't want to be the last one out of here. So I went and looked for a job, and lo and behold, I found a great job at Kennedy Space Center in the standards and calibration labs. And so I ended up staying there for 9 years while I went back to school and finished my bachelor's degree in electronic engineering technology. And then I went on for a master's degree in industrial engineering at the University of Central Florida. So once I finished that degree, then I was thinking, the public schools in Florida for our daughter. She was 9 years old at the time. Not great. Thought we wanted to, give her better schooling, either put her in a private school, or what I ended up doing was getting an offer for setting up an internal cal lab for Philips Electronics in Syracuse, New York. So I took that job, and we ended up moving to upstate New York. That lasted about a year. It did great. I automated everything. This is all fiber optics up to 3.2 gigahertz.
Oh, okay.
Coax fiber optic networks for television, right, for broadcasting. And set up the lab, did all the automation in HPV and a couple of other platforms, Metcal and some other ones. And they ended up selling the company and offered me an engineering test position, test engineer. And I said, I could have been working for NASA doing this. I don't think so. And that's when I found Transcat and went to work for them. And I've been with them for 23 years.
And the rest is history.
The rest is history.
Wow. So that's, I don't know if we just released the podcast with Paul Reese. I don't know if you happen to catch it. But
So I live in Kansas City. Chuck's in Little Rock. And I drove down here this morning. And on the drive down, I listened to part 1 of that. And yes, I know I've worked with Paul for years.
I was going to say, how funny. It just so happened 2 in a row, Kennedy.
That was a great podcast, by the way. I really enjoyed that.
Fantastic podcast.
Part 2 just released today. I think it was one of my favorite ones. It was really, really good. But
yeah, I'll have a couple.
It's a small world.
It is. It's so this is what I call 2 degrees of separation. You either know somebody directly or you know someone they know. That's about as far as it goes. It's
right.
a very tight network.
Especially when you get in our circles where it's previous PMEL. We still, even though I was Marine Corps Navy, we still call it PMEL now, because that's what everybody refers to it as, right? They're looking for PMEL training. Do you have PMEL training?
So I'll have a couple of comments to make about the podcast that I just reviewed for part 1 later on in this one, but just a couple of comments that I think are appropriate for that. But Perfect. It was really good. I enjoyed it.
Yeah.
Great. Well, so this leads us to now there's you've been brought on in the board of directors for NAPT with the primary person that watches this and interacts with our podcast is out of our school. Like, we have programs that directly link into our podcast. So there's going to be quite a few people that are brand new. And Chuck, do you want to talk about proficiency testing, why it's important, the main bullet points of what someone might need to know, and how it links into accreditation, what it could possibly mean to them, in their career? I know there's a lot of newer technicians, when they get into the field, they start hearing about these audits that come up, and that word just instantly freaks them out, right? Or testing and that proficiency testing and all those type of things. So maybe we can take back the veil on some of this and just kind of explain what it's all about.
Sure. Well, it's a very complicated conversation to begin with. And let me share with you, the purpose of a proficiency test really is and meant to be where you are compared against the results of a measurement against others making like measurements. And a lot of times people think that you're required to calibrate something and to perform to a certain specification. Nothing could be further from the truth. When you make a measurement, we really, the provider, we were called the providers. We really don't care whether it's in specification or not. We're looking for you to make a measurement. Yeah, we want you to make a measurement, to know what the actual uncertainty of the measurement was, to follow your process. And so the goal here is we go back to how it relates to accreditation. So if you're accredited, the whole goal is one accreditation accepted everywhere in the world. So if you're an accredited lab, the accreditation body says that you're technically capable of making a measurement, and that measurement can be, guaranteed, that we're saying you're technically capable to make a measurement. Well, how do you prove that? Well, you prove that through an outside evaluation. Besides the actual assessment by the accreditation body, there really is no other independent validation method besides participation in a proficiency test that can prove that particular competency, the technical competency of the organization. Hence why the provider is supposed to be able to provide that means of comparison. So by participating in a proficiency test, you're able to prove that competency. So you participate, you enroll in the kit, you get the kit, you make the measurements, you send that beautiful measurements off to the provider, then take your results. They compare that to other like organizations. Calibration A makes a measurement. They report it's 5. Calibration B reports it as 4. They both have an uncertainty of 1. Great. They're in what we call agreement. Their uncertainty is 1. Fabulous. Everyone makes. So that whole one concept of one measurement is agreement. The problem occurs is when one lab says it's 3, the other lab says it's 6, and they both say an uncertainty of 1. They're not in agreement. There's the problem. There's a problem. We have to figure it out. So hence, we have to figure out why they're not in agreement. Hence, that's why we do proficiency testing, to prove that we don't have this so-called 95% confidence, because there's a problem. That's why we do proficiency testing.
So, that again relates to exactly some of the things that was on your earlier podcast for part 1 with Paul Reese. That whole concept of having measurements that don't agree, right? And the uncertainties are not accounting for any of that. That whole Bayesian, the concept with Howard Kastrup, that all fits together. And this is exactly what this is checking. You're doing comparisons and saying, okay, you're in agreement within a reasonable amount, or you're not even close.
Yeah, Paul made a comment when I literally was chuckling, because when Paul made the comment in his cast where the one measurement. I mean, Paul and I, when we had breakfast this morning, I laughed. The never trust one measurement. I'm not kidding you. I laugh because for 25 years, it's been my go-to comment. Never trust one measurement. I'm not kidding. I laughed and laughed and laughed. I think Paul and I could be best friends. It's been a go-to comment of mine for years. Never trust one measurement. The more data, the better you are. I love more data.
Right. And there's a lot of decisions being made out there in the real world based on single measurement and very quick measurements in a lot of cases, which is
correct.
Is very disappointing.
Yeah, it's so wrong. Such a bad philosophy to accept.
Now, to be clear, so explain a kit. Like you can use any of the simple disciplines like temperature. So because that's just one that everyone has a reference on. So a kit would include something like a PRT, correct?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, a kit is just the acronym that we use where we describe, it's the case, it's the instructions, it might be the cabling. So it's an all-encompassing, what we send you. So, and the actual item would be the artifact. It could be, a PRT, it could be a torque wrench, it could be a DMM, a multimeter. For example, we send out 3458, aids, things like that. We send out 7.5, 6.5, 5.5, all different types of equipment based on the capability, the normal workload of the laboratory. So that's what the organization would subscribe to. So for temperature, we have, all kinds. I think we got like 8 different types of temperature kits that organizations could, enroll in that best matches their capabilities.
Right. So obviously we wouldn't send them an SPRT if they don't have any ways of doing fixed points or something like that,
Yeah, right. And then we don't do SPRTs. We used to ship around SPRTs, but unfortunately they're just too costly to ship, and they're too delicate. And as we know, the skill level unfortunately is not what it used to be. And so we're just not going to ship an SPRT anymore. Just not going to happen.
So you do have to have some control in this whole process, because you're starting with a pivot lab taking measurements with the artifact, sending it around to each of the labs that are going to participate, and then checking again to close out that whole scheme, right? The point is that if it doesn't stay in control through that process, you're going to have other errors introduced that are going to cause the whole thing to shift, and then the comparisons aren't going to be worth anything. So,
are you talking?
Again, SPRT is not good for that reason.
Right, because if it gets, let's say just for fun, like you send a USPS and it just gets bounced around everywhere.
Correct.
Obviously, during that transit, it has just changed from one place to another. So, yeah, makes sense.
Yeah. So, for example, we send out an RTD, which is a much more stable item that it has a probability of maintaining its characteristics through a shipping. So we can identify what's going to happen to that RTD from point A to point B, and we know it's going to shift from one lab to the other by a certain amount, and it can handle some sort of abuse by technicians. Right. So we know that going into it.
Right.
Much more durable product.
So it seems like this has been something that's been growing, though. I mean, obviously, I'm constantly on the LinkedIn and Facebook and all those things, seeing what's up with the industry. But it seems like a lot of partnerships and everything are growing for NAPT. Do you want to talk about some of those?
Oh, I'd love to. We're now entering our 28th year
Cool.
since NAPT was started. Can you believe that? 28 years. I'm flabbergasted. We have a real solid partnership with so many organizations. That is with the real foundation of why NAPT is the success that it is. We have partnership with third-party cal labs. We have partnerships with government agencies. I don't want to break the ice, but we're about to enter a partnership with you guys, where we work hand in hand, where we provide tools, we provide programs, where we work within the metrology community, where both parties win-win. And we do this together so that we provide cost-effective solutions for everybody. And we just love it. And it's a great solution where both parties benefit. And that's what we're here for. We're here to help each other. And that's what we do.
Well, and I know everywhere I go, and Howard, you and I haven't had a chance to sit down in person or anything. I believe we met at a MSC or NCSLI around
I attend both
2020.
of those regularly.
Yeah. So I
Yeah.
believe we've met, but we haven't had a chance to chat. But
Mhm.
I know a lot of people were very excited to see you come onto the board of directors for NAPT because
We've gotten a ton of very positive feedback on that. A little surprising, right? For me, I thought, okay, this is going to be an announcement that my company makes and that NAPT makes, and I expected a little bit of feedback, but it was a little overwhelming for me. A lot of people recognizing that, right? And congratulations and all of that, which is great. So we were hoping for some positive spin on taking NAPT further for the next 25 years, right? That's kind of the target here.
right.
And we thought that might take a while before I work with Chuck to get the board positions defined and get people in place in those board positions, and then start setting the strategy for NAPT going forward. Thought that'd take maybe a year or two to really get some momentum, but right out of the gate with the announcement of my position as vice chairman on the board, and with bringing Mitch Jones in as our marketing board member, and just making that announcement. And then, of course, the third thing was the announcement of NAPT with IndySoft partnering, right?
Right.
Those three things have just really catapulted the attention on NAPT, which is wonderful because people need to know what it is and what it's there for.
Now,
Yeah,
I have a
the
question.
partnership, I think I want to mention is that
Yeah,
we're
go
gonna we got the expansion of where the board of directors, because I'm getting old. I hate, we all get old. I'm retired. I really am, Ryan, believe it or not.
That's what you keep saying.
Well, I keep saying that, but honestly, God, every month I get a social security check. I'm not kidding you. But to do that, we're putting in place a real leadership board. The board of directors convinced me that we're gonna add some real leaders. We've got some people that we're going to invite. We're going to have a government person on there. We've got an invitation out, for example. We can't put the name yet. We have someone from NASA. We're pretty sure is going to join the board. Well, we got someone from an accreditation body is going to join the board. So we've got some really leaders that are within the metrology community that are going to take the leadership of it, and they're going to provide direction to NAPT. We have a new managing director that is a real solid business person that has taken on the managing leadership from a business director that understands business and is going to drive it. This individual has done some fabulous things that taken over in June of last year. I couldn't be more excited with the new managing director from NAPT. We've got some new people going to become the new technical advisor. There was just so many exciting things happening. I almost feel like shouldn't retire, but I'm excited from the standpoint that the people that are coming on board are going to be more qualified than I ever was to take this for the next 25 years. So I can't tell you how happy I am that the people that are coming on board are going to take this. The people that I've worked with for the last 25 years, it's in great hands. I'm happy for that.
I think the key thing there is that they have to be committed and dedicated to being active board members. We have to be participants in driving the strategy for NAPT going forward. And they have to have a vested interest, which is why we're selecting specific people that we are.
Yeah.
Right. Well, now I did want to ask a quick question because I did notice a few things language-wise where you say, growing in the labs that participate. To be clear, because I just realized I didn't know, is it optional? I thought in some way to be 17025 you have to participate in a PT. Is that incorrect, or do you mean
excellent question?
Yeah, is there other entities like that we're looking to get accredited?
Well, it's kind of complicated. So
okay,
the requirement for the ABs is they're required to have a proficiency testing plan of all their CAPs, their accreditation bodies. So Transcat has, 47 labs that are accredited. They're required to have they're required to have proficiency testing plans, and they're required to participate in proficiency testing that's appropriate to that plan.
Right.
And so there's this whole thing that says once a year, twice a year, and it's all up to risk analysis, and there's big, huge formulas and complex. And so yes, they're required to do it. How they do it is up to an interpretation. And we could have a whole podcast on interpretation and risk analysis.
Right.
Trust me, we really could.
Oh,
so
yeah.
maybe in a couple months we can do a whole thing on risk analysis. So yes, you're required to, under the definition of 25 now, to do proficiency testing. Whether or not it's once a month, once a year, once every 6 years, that's the question we have to ask and answer. It all depends on what accreditation body that you've been granted accreditation, who your assessor is, and what the interpretation of the flavor of the month is.
Look, here's the reality of it, right? Forget about what the letter of the law is and all the documents and standards. If I'm a consumer of calibration services, not my company, right, but using companies like mine or our competitors, and I need to have my instruments calibrated, and I have to have, I understand what uncertainties are all about, and I need to apply those and actually maybe use those in guard banding, or maybe I don't. But either way, I need to select a company that has proven they know what they're doing, right? They can take the measurements within a reasonable uncertainty that doesn't provide probability of false acceptance or false reject. Mainly the consumer is worried about false acceptance. And I know that you guys are going to get into more of that in part 2, right? Maybe even a further podcast, but that's the criticality, right? And if the standards bodies, the accreditation bodies, only require a minimum amount of proficiency testing as proof that you actually know what you're doing, then as a consumer, I'm going to say, well, I want the people that actually did those tests to calibrate my equipment. Otherwise, I don't know what I'm getting.
Right.
So it really is fundamental to proving everyone in that organization can do what they say they can do.
And this also goes into, I mean, obviously I'm trying to train the next generation, and I want people that, for lack of better words, are somewhat obsessed with measurements, right? And I know myself, as I'm taking all this equipment behind me and I'm training at different locations, I'm checking my stuff against other people's stuff, because I'm there. I'm seeing, and they're, we're all, and they're, sometimes we're using their equipment in the training, but just being able to see where you stand amongst, like you're saying, other labs and everything can kind of let you know, if you're kind of going astray, right?
So keep in mind, in the actual proficiency test process, you don't see anything else. You're just taking your measurement, reporting your uncertainty, submitting it, seeing if you pass or fail. After the fact, then you can see how you're comparing, right? But that's the blind study portion of that. The blind test is the key to knowing where you actually are.
Right, because you'll get a thumbs up, thumbs down, right? When you'll give the result and basically,
correct.
But that's why I said Paul and I could be best friends, because in your podcast he mentioned that exact process.
He did.
And I said, well, I gotta buy Paul a cocktail next time we get together at the conference, because throughout that cast, he was a strong supporter of proficiency testing and why it's so important to do interlaboratory comparisons. I know I'm biased towards the provider that I work with, but I'm a bigger advocate that I don't care if you use the organization I'm associated with. I'm a stronger advocate that you've got to do it. I don't care if you do it internally. I don't care if you do it with another provider, but you've got to do it. That's the only tool that you've got that is independent of other means. You've got to do it. It's that simple.
And then, so as you mentioned Mitch, right? Wasn't he the one of the ones from IndieSoft that's coming in?
Yeah, let me speak real briefly to Mr. Jones. This is a young man that I met about 3 years ago. He is an up and coming young man that's fairly new to the metrology community. He is literally going to be, I predict, in the future, unbelievable leader. He is taken by storm what it is to be a metrologist. He, mark it on your calendars, he will be a leader in this industry in the future. We're lucky to have him to come on board and be part of us. He is not only a super fine young man, but he is smart as a whip. We're lucky to have him come on and help us with the marketing. He's already got some great ideas. We're just lucky to have him, but he will be in the future a great addition to the board, but a leader for the community. I foresee some really big things for him down the future.
Well, and in our discussion, Chuck, off the cast, didn't you mention there is some cool? I don't know if, and I can cut this out if we're not able to talk about it, but isn't there some cool integrations with IndieSoft
we
and
announced
stuff?
it formally. Absolutely,
Yeah.
We put out a press release. One of the tools that NAPT has is we have the accreditation manager. A few years back, we had a lot of companies like this program that we wrote called the accreditation manager. So we started offering it to a number of companies, and it's taken off like a whip. So what IndieSoft and NAPT have done is we have this agreement now where we're going to write code where we're going to allow seamless integration between the IndieSoft application and the NAPT accreditation manager. What that means is you're now going to get the best management for calibration is going to seamlessly talk for those certain modules, like the pending action module, the nonconformance, the corrective action module. I can't think of there's 5 modules that are going to document control. They're going to talk to each other. So you're going to get the best calibration management. It's going to talk to the best accreditation manager. Now understand that there's 2 different applications. Managing your accreditation and managing your calibration program, they've always been managed separately. So this will be the first time that they'll be able to have 2 complicated platforms talk to each other. It's huge. And so we will be the only 2 programs that will be able to do that together. And we were, the minute it was released, the phones have gone off the just ring, which we're thrilled to. We've been after this for literally 2 years to get this, work together. We finally worked out the details. And it's another one of those where we have this partnership things where we're constantly talking about partnerships with other people, how both communities can work together to solve problems. This is another one of those relationships where we're helping solve metrology's problems. We're going to work together and solve a problem.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, because a lot of the there's inefficiencies that I've noticed as a lot of labs are transitioning from I guess I'll just call it the pen and paper era, right? And so those type of integrations get me really excited because I know I did years as a technical manager, but one of my key roles there is supporting a bunch of people on site. And those are the things that can be really helpful when you have big players that communicate together and integrate. So yeah, that sounds like a really good partnership that makes sense for lab managers.
Yeah, we're excited about it. We've got some really big players that already use our software, and we have a version where it's very cost effective for third-party cal labs. I mean, and the thing that we want to focus is that we're partners with everybody. Our goal is to help any organization that wants to make a better measurement. We're there to help every organization.
Very nice.
Yeah.
And what else is on the horizon, so to speak? I know you're looking for, as Howard was mentioning, more board members and all that for the technical positions and all that.
Besides my retirement?
Well, you keep saying your retirement, but again, why retire when everything starts heating up, Chuck?
Because all I want to do is sit on my front porch and throw rocks at kids as they cross my yard.
Nice.
I mean, that's fair enough.
Brought you the old grumpy man.
Yeah. Honestly, I'm coming up on 43 years. It's really, I'm just tired, Ryan, to be honest with you. I'm just tired.
Time to pass the baton.
Yeah, it really is.
And you mentioned not doing the conferences as well. Is that correct?
No, this year, the board asked me to still go to the conference this year, to still, do
Okay,
what I
good.
do best, which is get myself in trouble. I still have the ability to, get, as they like to say, I still piss a lot of people off, which I'm very good at. So I still plan to do that, but I don't think that NAPT would be where it's at today if I didn't get people upset. But so I'm really
true.
good at that. But I'm also I think that I'm pretty good at selling NAPT. I'm really think that we're really good at getting people to understand the importance of proficiency testing. 28 years ago we started this because we were sitting in a hotel room in Seattle with a bunch of people. We talk about how funny things are. We were sitting with an old person that convinced me to, as I started, I did my first map with NCSLI some 30 years ago. I used to do a lot of interlaboratory comparisons through NCSLI up in Minneapolis. And we just happened to be looking through some standards and realizing back when I was a Cal Lab manager for a big old company up in Minneapolis, and we're reading when the Guide 25 came out. I don't know if you remember Guide 25 or not, but when Guide 25 came first out, it said this paragraph about proficiency testing. It's under 5.9. Long story short, though, we were trying to figure out how we were going to do this, and there really wasn't any real formalized program. We went to NCSLI, we went to ASQ, and all those other professional societies we all belong to, and there was none that really wanted to do it. And we were 3 sheets into it at the conferences, as we all go to, and we get 2 o'clock in the morning, we're 3 sheets in, and someone convinced me, said, Chuck, why don't you do that? You've got the bad word. And so next day I went back to Minneapolis and borrowed $20,000 and started NAPT, and here we are 28 years later, and who would have thunk? But
Filling the market's needs.
yeah.
Oh yeah, that sounds strangely familiar to somewhat how I started the school. Nowhere near
Sure.
28 years yet, but
Yeah.
yeah, definitely saw that. I came out of the military kind of confused how there wasn't something already set up in the civilian community. But that's a
Well, for
topic
years
for
we
another
all
day.
relied on the military for all that training, right?
Yeah,
As that dwindled and changed and moved around, it created gaps for
it
commercial
sure
industry.
did. Howard, since we're talking about the conferences, I would love for you to talk about your experiences with them. I know I
Sure.
just from going to them, so I don't know if you both know, I didn't know at all about the conferences when I retired from the Marine Corps. Like I knew nothing about them. I had already started the school, and Mike Schwartz told me I should go to the conferences, and I was like, didn't know anything about them. So
Wow.
it's one of those things. It's just sometimes the word doesn't get down to the lowest levels, I guess. But my years going from 2019 on, I see Transcat participates. So I know you guys are very supportive of the
Yeah,
conferences.
we're a platinum sponsor for NCSL. So NCSL International, right, started out as a National Conference of Standards Labs initially. And when I was in the Air Force and getting ready to get out of the military in 1986, I actually found that first job at Martin Marietta through the register for all of the companies that were members of NCSL. I had that pamphlet, and I sent resumes to a ton of those guys, 200 or 300 resumes out, right? And I got a bunch of interviews, and and ended up settling, actually, kind of skipped that part, a little company called ITT Aerospace in Fort Wayne, Indiana. So I was there for 3 months and ended up getting another offer, and that's the one I took in Orlando with Mark Marietta. But that's how I contacted those different companies and the members who were managers in those companies or directors. And so NCSL immediately played a role in my career just from that, right? That was my first introduction right out of the Air Force.
Very cool.
And then since then, I actually didn't attend my first NCSL international conference until 1999 when I was with Phillips. And I went to the one in Toronto. That was my first one. I had also, just prior to that, went to a seminar that Phil Stein had given, if people remember Phil. And that's where I met Dilip Shah. He was at that training session on measurement uncertainties that Philip Stein gave in Toledo, Ohio. So all of that ties through the members that are, that would have been through SQ, but all that ties to the members that attend all these different conferences, right? And so that started pulling me in. It's like a vortex, just a whirlpool, and you just get to the edge of it and it starts sucking you in, which is good. I mean, I've had great experiences with each of the conferences, from having the booths that we had, put on the exhibit floor and meeting people, walking the exhibit floors, presenting papers. I've written, I think, about 40 papers or so, mainly on topics about measurement risk and really what does calibration do for products? What are we trying to avoid there, right? The whole traceability chain to make sure we don't put bad products out the door that hurt people or kill them. And there's so many things that are a factor in that. And one of the things I tend to focus on are these different items that can cause what I call quality blind spots. I've coined that term and I use it regularly in my presentations. Quality blind spot, I'll give you a simple example. Manufacturers of instrumentation put out their specs for the way the instrument will perform. They might publish that on a website page. They might publish that on a what we call a data sheet. They might publish it in an operating manual, and they might change those specs. And a lot of them have a caveat that says published specs subject to change without notification, right?
Right.
And so if someone who needs an instrument to make a measurement, a manufacturing engineer needs to select an instrument to measure the product, they're going to take a look at one of those things, and they don't always agree because sometimes they're in changes, right?
Right.
They're going to select it based on a specific tolerance that they see. They're going to need to have it calibrated. They either have an internal lab or they send it to an external lab for commercial lab. And then what spec is that commercial lab going to use or that internal lab? Is it different? Did they pick a different one from the manufacturer than what was used to select it, right? So now you have an immediate a gap on the tolerance that says I need to be notified when it hits this tolerance based on what the manufacturing engineer thought that they picked versus what the Cal Lab is failing or passing it at. That's a quality blind spot without people even knowing it. If you don't think through that process, that happens. It's been happening. Manufacturers change their specs all the time.
Right.
So quite honestly, the best calibration you can do for anyone is a custom calibration to say, I need these tolerances, these test points to measure the product with this instrument. I need it calibrated to those as well. Right. But nobody has time for that. And the cost would be astronomical.
Right.
So we do default calibrations to OEM specs, and that's something that's just not standardized very well. So one way to solve that is to have a centralized data sheet team that has nothing, that their sole focus is to check out those specs, and when they see inconsistencies, clarify it with the manufacturer and with the customer.
Yeah, and you're
simple
nailing
quality blind
it. That's a
spot.
whole team.
There are so many quality blind spots that occur that can cause a false acceptance of a calibration and or false acceptance of a product when you're testing.
I'd argue that contract review is supposed to solve that.
Contract review says you have to understand what your customer's needs are.
Yeah.
And the reality of that situation is when somebody sends a quote for 1,800 items or 10,000 instruments, they don't have time to go through every one of those to talk about what their needs are.
Sort by line item, right?
So the way we do it is most commercial labs will say we default to the manufacturer tolerances. Tell us when you need something different and we'll create a custom data sheet.
No,
it's up to them to get back with us, right? But it is a huge gap that can cause these quality blind spots and failures when they shouldn't fail or don't fail when they should.
Right. I like it. Quality blind spots.
They can create problems for sure.
Well, is that going to be so are you guys ready to announce your podcast adventures?
Well, it's gonna be different than this one.
Yeah.
Well, the reason I bring it up, that could be a segment, quality blind spots. I know I would tune in.
Oh, it absolutely can. Yes.
Well, let me tell you, Ryan. Okay, so we'll announce it. We'll get back to us. Howard and I argue like cats and dogs.
Oh my goodness.
We drive together events. Howard and I have been friends for years. So let's go segue back to a minute where we've known each other for 25 years.
That's it.
And two of the conferences, which before I talk about that, let's talk briefly about the conferences a lot of great friendships have been made through the conferences.
Yeah.
You know, there was a time where you go to the conferences simply because you've made so many good friends. Unfortunately, over the last 5 years, a lot of us have, you know, we've retired, you know, we're no longer with us. And that's another reason why, you know, and the conferences aren't what they used to be. I mean, I'm going to go back to 1996 in Atlanta, the greatest NCSL conference ever with 1996 in Atlanta. It was so much fun. We had like 1,400 people there.
I was going to say around 1,500.
Oh, it was
Well, do
unbelievable.
you think it's a time issue? I mean, I see a lot of labs that are in a crunch where asking them to release people to go to a conference is like laughable to them. You
It's
know what I mean?
budgeting, economics, and pandemic had a huge impact on it as well.
Mm-hmm. No, I'm going to say the pandemic was the coffin, was the nail, the final nail.
Yeah.
Economics was the biggest crunch. They don't want to send technicians anymore. It got worse before that. Before the pandemic, the conferences were already dead. The internet is what killed the conferences. You know, you can go and get a specification, everything you need. You no longer need to talk to a salesman. You don't need to get the latest and greatest by going to a conference. You don't need to talk to anybody. Unfortunately, the internet ruined the conferences. It really has.
And it's a shame because it came at a time when, you know, the leaders, the board of these conferences was starting to recognize you can't just have people from NIST or Sandia Labs. So nothing wrong with those presentations. They're fantastic.
Right.
People like Paul Reese understand those without problems, right? But the common person using the test instruments, that's way over their heads, right? Absolutely. It's not what they need. And they wanted more of the papers to recognize what those needs were at the end of the traceability chain when you're actually applying this to the product, to help people understand what's the importance here, what do you got to watch out for, what's the gotchas, what are the quality blind spots, right?
Right.
And so they were wanting to drive it that direction. It was starting to head that direction, but all these events occurred with budgeting and economics and pandemic that just kind of really reduced it. And this is at a time when they really need to see this and hear this.
Yeah.
Well, even in the 5 years I've been in business, the cost of flights have doubled. I mean, on the average, and it's painful.
Well, it's not just the flights; the hotel costs are up.
Oh yeah.
We're talking. It's 38% more to attend a conference than it was 3 years ago, and so the average organization is not going to send anybody. I mean, good or bad, I talk to 100 people every month, and I have, you know, good or bad, again, lots of relationships, and I say to them during the conversation, "Are you going to such and such conference?" "Not this year." "Why?" "Well, it's just not." And their answer is, "It's just not worth it anymore. It's not worth me going," is what the most answer I get all the time. It just doesn't bring me any value anymore. And I try and convince them sometimes to go, but you know, it's a lost cause, so I just quit trying anymore. But that's a whole different conversation. We could have another podcast on why people don't go to conferences anymore.
Yeah.
But to your answer is, I used to love going to conferences because there were so many sales that were made. There were so much friendships that were made. I mean, I could bore you to tears with how we would sit after the conference. We would order, you know, bottle after bottle after bottle. He and I would get together and we would go on and on about stuff, and the table, people would just sit at the table and listen to Howard and I go on about story after story about how we did this, you know, how I fell off the mountain, how he did this. People would just love to hear us go at it. And people have been saying for years, why are you guys not doing a podcast and just arguing online, just doing what you guys do all the time? And people would love to hear you guys banter.
Just document.
Bantering, silly, funny, whatever, right?
Yeah. So I finally gave in to Howard and said, okay, fine. We'll take this, you know, Chuck and Howie roadshow to the.
Hey, look, all I'm going to say is if it turns out great, it was my idea. If it doesn't, it was Chuck's.
Exactly. Well, I've been saying this, and of course I had a conversation offline with Chuck on this, but we've been really busy, so it's hard for me when I'm traveling a lot to produce the podcast, and we're putting a much a strong effort into maintaining it, just because the demand is so strong. People want the information. I think the more that can do it and share their love of metrology and good information, things like the quality blind spots, I think it's a win for everybody, you know?
Yeah. So your podcast, its format is more focused on training aspects, right?
And brand new people.
Great detailed information, maybe more than you want, but very interesting. Ours is going to be a little more levity, little more, lighthearted, focus, but still getting to the point, right?
Yeah.
So we'll see as it goes along. It'll kind of develop its own characteristics.
And my job is to piss people off.
Well, he's good at that.
Oh yeah, you're the abrasive. We came up with the term for it, or you came up with the term for it when we chatted? What didn't you?
You got to have a funny guy and a straight guy, right?
You're an agitator.
Agitator. Oh yeah, I'm.
That's it.
Yeah,
you're an agitator.
I've been known to do that. I really have.
Nothing gets done without one.
That's and that you're right. And to that point, something else that was in your other podcast that I wanted to talk about is, and something else we talked about at breakfast this morning was, there's different levels of people in our business, and it really takes understanding that it takes all types of people. It takes the workers, if you will, the technician, and understanding the technician has a very vital role in making the measurement. And we can't expect a technician to understand some of the things that like a Paul Reese or a Chris Gratchen or a Harry Moody. They're at a different level of understanding the measurement. Yeah. And for the higher, what I call the ivory tower individual, to expect the technician to understand the measurement you shouldn't. The technician there is for a role, and to respect the technician's role. Too often we have too many people that expect the technician to understand the measurement greater than what they should. That's what the metrologist, the engineer, is for. And too often I think we're missing the point that each one of us has a very really important role, and we all play a role, and none of us is more important than the other one. Each one of us is very important in making understanding that we all have a vital role to that. And it makes me kind of mad. And like I said, it's why I get agitated, why I piss some people off when they think they're better than other people because they have sometimes a little bit better understanding of something than the other person that's
Look, there's technicians out there that just like to turn and burn, do their job, not worry about it, work automated stations, do a bunch of that all at once, right, and be very effective and productive. There are techs who love to go on site and work with the customers. There are techs who want to get into it more and get more detail and more into the engineering and the metrology part of it. Right? There's all types, and they're all coming from different backgrounds. So they don't all have the same understanding. And the less we have of the technical schools through the military and through colleges and universities, the more we have to develop that internally, right, and be able to reach them at whatever level they're starting at and be able to bring them up, which is where your company comes into play.
I couldn't agree more. Yeah.
That's what I'm saying, Ryan, is what you're doing with Sign is extremely important. We need more of that. We need to understand that we've got to develop metrologists now. We're not going to get them from the DoD anymore. It's just not happening.
Well, I appreciate what you're both saying, because obviously you have been around for a while in this industry and seen this, and it is something.
Years.
Just a few.
One for me.
Well, and it's one of those things for me, it was a little bit of surprise because I wanted to always progress, and you can call that the Marine in me. I'm looking for my pathways up, and I want to learn more and more. But as I've gotten more comfortable and as I'm training more and more of the industry and getting a feel for the people that are out there, you're absolutely right, because there are some that they want to deconstruct every single part of it all the way up, and they want to be the one that figures out those uncertainties and all that. And then there are some that really love, hey, I love doing torque. And it's like, okay, you do torque. Hey, I love doing pressure. Dimensional. There's a lot of people that get really obsessed with dimensional.
Oh, yeah.
It's just one of those things. That's what I love about metrology too. It's easy to sell to someone as a career path, because it's like, do you want to work with your hands? We can do that. Do you want to be high tech and do 80 gigahertz? You can do that. There's just so many options.
And statistics, there's a room for you there as well. You will go into management. It's just an avenue for everyone.
Yeah, right, exactly.
Yeah.
And it's so critical for you to offer that platform for everyone. And we use your company as well through Transcat. I know many of our competitors do. I know you've had sessions that you have offered through ESCO. Right. Probably some other companies as well, which is great, and that's what you need to be doing. There's definitely a demand for that.
Yeah, we try and be as public and third party as everyone as possible. That's for sure.
Well, your philosophy is the same as ours. You're there to help everybody make a better measurement.
Right. Well, and
Yeah.
there's a lot of support that just isn't out there, and I'm sure you both can understand. It's hard to find technicians. It's also hard to find the right people to train people
It
and
is.
to support as well. Because I mean I've helped managers that they'll get those phone calls, they'll go out and they'll solve the problem,
Mhm.
but they won't go out and help that technician not have that problem the next time, you know? And
Oh,
so
yeah. Wow.
so it's hard, right? We all got time crunch, and especially when it comes down to commercial cal, it's like we need to get this done. I don't have time to teach you right now. You know, let's just get this done and then we'll address it next time, you know. So it's rough, you know.
Oh, I tell you, I would not want to go back to commercial cal. You couldn't pay me enough to go back to the commercial cal business.
See, and I love it.
I like on-site. I tell people, especially some of the younger guys, if they want to get really good experience, go on-site. If especially if you have a good support system at your company,
Yeah.
you know, it's a
And by the way, not every technician has the social skills to be able to do that,
no.
right? And so that's important as well, because you have to represent your company, regardless of who you work for. Some are really good at that, some not so good. But I love that they have a passion for it, right?
Yeah.
That they have a drive to learn it and work with the clients and do better.
Yeah, they're like little mini customer service reps, huh?
Yeah, yes.
They really are. And it's just the nature of the beast. Sometimes there is clashing of heads, especially when there's engineers involved at some of these customers, you know, and they
That
think
could
they
be a
know
whole
better.
other podcast, right? Just
Yeah.
the fact, I mean, I'm an engineer too, and just the fact that engineering curriculums don't normally contain anything to do with metrology. They might have an instrumentation course, one class, one semester that says, here's what an O-scope is, here's what a DMM is, and maybe some hand tools. Doesn't really get into traceability or the whole purpose and how to select instrumentation, suitability for applications, none of that, right? And that's
Right.
critical to their jobs.
Right.
And so we end up having consulting opportunities for that type of thing.
I know, isn't that wild?
It is
Because you would
crazy.
think that would be a major part, you know,
Should be, yeah.
of the curriculum. Have you ever visited with Ed Morse over there at
As a
University of
matter
North
of
Carolina?
fact, I used to be on the advisory board at UNC Charlotte.
Isn't that cool? I love talking to
Yeah.
them about
That is
that
awesome.
program, you know, and
Yeah.
but you know, he was mentioning, you know, yeah, there's people that go up to PhD in metrology, but you know, they're not going out there to be a bench technician.
We actually
you know?
hired one of their PhDs to work at one of our, so we have our commercial labs. We have 30 commercial labs, and then we have private labs that we call client-based labs because they're embedded in our customer's facility.
Mhm.
We have 20 of those. And so they have enough volume of work where we just take over their cal program and run it for them. And one of those was a orthopedics manufacturer. And we needed technicians to do the calibration work on these custom gauges, what we call geometric dimensioning and tolerancing. A lot of people aren't aware of that. When I took that course, by the way, in my undergraduate, it's like, what do I need this for? Right. And I struggled with it, but then I end up using it every day in my work. So we ended up hiring one of the engineers out of the master's program at UNC Charlotte, who specializes in GD&T, and helped us to set that up and work with their engineers and manufacturing their products. Fantastic fit. So you never know when it's going to come into play.
There you go. Free shout out to the metrology program at UNC
Fantastic program.
in Monroe. Yeah, not a lot of people know about that. It's a college that you can get up to all the way through a doctorate in metrology.
Yes.
So
Yes.
so it's something not a lot of people know. So we're getting close to the hour. I do have my last question I'll want to ask you two, but Chuck, was there anything else that you wanted to cover NAPT wise?
Oh, I could go on for another hour.
Anything of pressing? Any important announcements for the short term?
Well, for the short term, just that, well, we're always looking for technical advice. You can, the camera, I don't know if you're going to cut that out or not. You can see actually Howard and I are in the same room. We're down here. We got board meetings this weekend here in Little Rock. We're always looking for more technical advisors. Anybody that's listening to this podcast, you know, the biggest problem, I guess, that we are always looking for is feedback from the community at large. You know, what are you looking for in new kits? You know, what do you want from us? That is one of the hardest things we have, is getting the feedback. What do you want? You know, we have, 120 kits that we offer to the community at large. And we're constantly designing new kits. We're improving, we're replacing artifacts. I mean, it's a constant thing that we do. But we want to make sure that we're fulfilling the needs, for us to, send out surveys. I mean, everybody gets 100 surveys a day. We get bored of those, right? But so every time a chance I get, I want to put the word out there. Please, communicate with us. We're all about, feedback. Let us know what you want, what you need. And technical advisors, as I shared before earlier in the broadcast, the biggest thing that is so important about NAPT and how we became the biggest, the largest, all those acronyms, why we're the best, is because we have partnerships. We have 50 plus technical advisors that advise us. We have all these people that work with NAPT, and we want, more people to be part of us. So if you want to be part of NAPT, you can give us a call. We'd love to have a conversation, how you can help us out, how we can work with you. You want to be a pivot lab, if you're a, top rated lab, come join, come be part of the family. We'd love to have a conversation with you. Help us develop kits, help us be part of it. Dare to compare. I mean, go to our website, all that kind of stuff. I mean, I don't want to bore you, but if you want me to sell NAPT, I can certainly sell NAPT for the next 30 minutes.
Well, is it one of those? So, are you saying, is it one of those things that I'm assuming constantly there's newer things that get added to scopes out there? So, is it one of those things that you just need to be aware that something is out there that needs a proficiency test that maybe is non-traditional for the lab? Because obviously, there's like we mentioned, RTDs, digital multimeters, those things have been around for quite a while. You have a lot of history. And
the biggest problem we have is so this is the problem is that we as a provider and the other providers have, I'm sure, the same problem that we have. In order to have value to a kit, you want to have at least a certain amount of what we call a participant. So for us to develop a kit, we want to have at least 10 participants. Otherwise, if we put it, we call into distribution, where we're going to send it to lab A, lab B, lab C, and they make their measurements on it, and then we have enough data submittals where we can do what we call statistical analysis. And there's got to be normalcy to it. If we don't have normalcy, then we have problems, and all the statistics that are associated with it. We have the standard that we have to follow. 13528, ISO 13528 is our Bible. It's our statistics guidance Bible, if you will, that a provider should follow. If you don't, then you're not doing it accordingly what you should. Anyways, long story short, so if you don't have enough people, then you can do another way, and that's called an interlaboratory comparison. So we have this software that we offer to companies where they can do it internally, and we offer that as a service as well. And then we have what we call the NAPT Assisted, where we'll teach organizations how to do their own proficiency testing program. That's been the biggest, newest way for people to solve that problem when we don't have an artifact for them. So we've got companies across the world now that are using this, what we call the Intra Wizard, to manage their own proficiency testing program, which we've monitorized so that it goes on the web and you click a few buttons and it walks through a wizard that, to be quite honest with you, an 8th grader can use to run their own program. Our programmers did a fabulous job with it. But we had to do that because there was a problem where people weren't able to easily do and fulfill the requirement for doing their own proficiency testing because it was so specialized. Again, you want to have enough people to do a test that brings value. And we're not going to do a test just for the sake of signing up for it. I mean, I could send you a kit and send it back to me and give you a certificate that says you passed, but we call that lick 'em and stick 'em in the calibration world, right?
It takes away from the purpose of it.
Why would I send you a kit that gives you a false sense of performance? I'm just taking money and I'm literally robbing you. I mean, call me a crook if I do that, right? I mean,
but a lot of what drives the need comes from your scope of accreditation.
Yeah,
you need to test every one of those parameters on your scope in a period of 4 years.
Yeah,
and so without that, some labs have very specialized measurements they make, and to Chuck's point, maybe not enough participants for that. So there's ways to get to it.
Yeah, so we have tools that will assist you in ensuring that you can comply with your requirements, and we'll teach you how to do it. If we can't give you a kit, we'll teach you how to do it yourself, very cost effectively. Is my point.
Well, and I mean, there's so many things. Like that's the other thing I gained from commercial cal is you see how much stuff is out there that just walks through the door that you have to measure. That can be so random, really. And so I can just imagine, over time, some of the scopes can get really creative,
Yeah.
in
Well,
things that get
keep in mind
added.
though, the scope really is nothing more than a marketing document at the end of the day.
Right.
It says that this, I can do this and I can do this better than the guy across the street. That's what it really comes down to.
Well, yeah, and I mean, that's it, pretty much exactly what people use it for. Or like we'll see technicians like, hey, I want to, hey, should I apply at this place? Hey, I can look at the scope and see if I generally know what they do, right? If I generally have the knowledge for what they have on their scope, I should be okay. Where I think the one that really are in a bit of a knowledge deficit is probably the customers of calibration, especially those in the industries like the biomedical or whatever, where it can be so random who is actually helping. And then, they can't really connect the dots on that, if that makes sense.
Mhm. Oh yeah,
Exactly.
right. Yeah.
So, you probably have noticed Chuck's camera moving in and out, trying to zoom and pan and all this stuff. And I got to tell you, we got these cameras set up 20 minutes before the podcast, and we're trying to struggle with trying to get that set where we could both be in frame. And, it's not that we're technology challenged. It's just we didn't have enough time to get it set up. But that being said, kicking around the name for our podcast, we haven't settled on a specific name yet, but we were kind of kicking around a whole spin on Chat GPT. It's all the rage now for searches on the internet.
Mm-hmm.
We thought Chat NAPT might be cool. Chat NAPT with AI chatterbots, Chuck and Howie, right? We are the artificial intelligence.
I love it.
Heavy on artificial.
Very artificial, yeah.
Yeah, I love it. Well, I'm glad you brought that up. What do you think about it, Howard? Especially like when you're thinking about the big picture of a commercial cow and large scale cow, and what do you see the importance of AI being in the future? Do you have any thoughts on it? Not to put you on the
It's
spot.
interesting because years ago we had the board of Transcat challenge some of our leadership internally to figure out how do you calibrate over the internet, right? How do you transfer those measurements so that you could just send an artifact to someone and they can make a measurement over the internet? And it's like, okay, first of all, you need to understand that you can't put pressure over the internet. It's not electrical, right?
Right.
But then they came along with the replacement standard for mass, right? Being the what can I say, watt balance,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Oh, yeah.
And then they transferred that from a mass to an electrical measurement, and that just tended to confuse the whole point. But in any case, AI can definitely help with searching and learning and that type of knowledge. It remains to be seen. I don't know at this moment how far that could go with us. I don't know, Chuck, do you have any concept of?
Oh, I'm sure trend analysis will be nuts with it, huh? Like if you have a lot of data and being able to pick out trends that maybe some of us wouldn't see off the surface. I don't know. I'm just winging it.
We get customers, of course, we sell test instrumentation through Transcat as well. Not trying to plug that part of it, but the point is that we have customers say, hey, I've been using this particular model. It's not working well for me. What do you recommend? And we get that all the time. And we could look at our database of, hundreds of thousands of calibrations and narrow it down to this type of instrument and to say, this is the type of results that have occurred. But here's the problem with that. Every customer uses it differently. They handle it differently. They store it differently, right? And if they have things that are biasing it being out of tolerance more, it's going to maybe make it look bad, depending on the volume of calibrations for that particular model. So we always state that caveat first. We'll share in aggregate that information, not specific details of clients, but in aggregate, this model performs blah, 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 right?
Right.
With the caveat that maybe it's a little lower performance because of the way certain people that own it handle it.
Okay,
or
makes
use
sense.
it or clean it. We had a client, a pharma client, take a look at their specific data one year to say, what's the out of tolerance trends and what's the top 3 or 4 items, right? One of them was a temperature and humidity probe that was used in their clean rooms. And as soon as they saw the number of out of tolerances, a very high out of tolerance rate or failure rate, they said, oh, we know exactly what's going on with that because they use them every day, right? And they said, those are in our clean rooms. They're installed in there. And when we have to change products out or change lines out, we pull everything out of the room and we wash it all down. Well, they don't take the temperature and humidity probes out of there sometimes, and they're causing damage to them or offsetting them with what their cleaning solutions are. So they could see that that was probably the root cause, and then they did further investigations, right?
Yeah.
That data is going to be biasing that particular model.
Mhm.
You don't necessarily want to tell a customer it's a bad model, right? Because of the way it was used or cleaned or whatever.
Yeah, for sure.
So it's important that you pull out those outliers before you use that data for effective decisions.
Yeah, that's the biggest thing that we've seen as well on our side is we've been able, with the use of AI, taking 28 years of data and able to put in place particular parameters. And what would usually take weeks to analyze, with the help of the AI, we can crunch data in seconds now, which is, and it's unbelievable. I mean, we got some programmers that are using AI 10 times, 1,000 times faster now doing. So I ask questions of these guys, like, this is what I want to see. And they'll send me back, and literally 10 minutes later and say, okay, here's the results. And it would be weeks before when I would ask these questions. And now we've got it so where it's so uniform, it becomes part of our analysis, where I can just go to the things and say, this is the same question, and a week later I get the same answer. It's remarkable the amount of uniformity now we can do in data searches. And and we're just a small company. Can you imagine what these big companies are doing for data country? I mean, the amount of analysis that they're able to do with on analytics, it's just blows me away.
Well, now you guys are making me think that there really should be, as manufacturers, like I always like to use in Morehouse, since I'm friends with Henry, but like they should be soliciting some of that data now for AI. I mean, that sounds valuable both directions,
You would think, yeah.
We've actually had people approach us now where they want some more in-depth data to prove where we're at with the pass-fail analysis. Because we're making some pretty strong claims about this confidence level of where I made a very strong claim. I got a lot of people pissed off at me where this this claim we make about on every single certificate of calibration, where we say 95% confidence level. I'm telling you, Ryan, that's a statement that we really need to take a second look at, because I have data that questions whether or not that particular statement can be defended in a court of law. I'm telling you straight up, if I were to take you to a court of law and I were a good attorney, I could tell you that statement is not defendable. Take that for what it's worth.
Yeah.
You do the analysis. I'm just telling you right now, that statement is not defendable in a court of law.
Just as a blanket statement, you mean?
Well, it's another podcast, but I've given a number of papers over the last few months, and I'm giving more papers. I've been asked to give more papers, and I'll probably give the same paper at NCSLI. And so I'm just going to tickle the audience. You want to see the hard data that proves why that particular statement is not defendable? Come to my paper at NCSLI in Denver.
There you go. In July, right? Denver in July.
Correct. Yeah.
Now you're gonna have a packed house. That'd be awesome. So
a lot of questions, maybe a few lawyers.
Right. Yeah. Asking to represent some people. So my last question is the fun one that I like to ask a lot, especially for you guys that have been around a while. So what's the weirdest thing you've ever seen measured, or the weirdest measurement you've been a part of in Cal?
Have you ever heard of a wobulator?
No.
Okay. I was about 18 years in when I first saw my first wobulator, and it's actually a vibration measurement, right? But I had never heard that term, and it was a specialized unit. Holy cow. So I'm learning every day. I'm 41 years in metrology, and I continue to learn every day, which is why it's a great career field, right?
Yes.
Always good things to learn and do, and keep changing their things out. I want to steal from you. What's your strangest thing?
Well, I don't know if it's the strangest, but it's the biggest reason why we need proficiency testing. Not too long ago, maybe I'm talking not even 5 years ago, we had someone participate in a gauge block proficiency test, and they used a caliper as their standard.
That's an impressive caliper.
Yes.
And they are an accredited organization, and they put as their uncertainty what was on their scope of accreditation. But they used a caliper as their standard.
Well, I've got one related to that if we have time.
Oh, you got time. Let's hear it.
So I saw, and this hasn't been all that long ago, within the last 5 years, we had calibrated 4 rulers, 6-inch rulers, right? They had on one scale, they had 2 scales. On one scale, it was, I forget what the divisions were, but in any case, pretty
like
small.
one of these?
Pretty much like that. Yeah, correct.
One of these
I
small
think
ones.
these were Starrett rulers. And so we did the calibration on those, and all 4 of them failed. Now, of course, the first thing you should say is, did we do something wrong? What's going on here? So we have a policy where we double check that, either with a different standard or another tech comes in and resets it up and checks it. But these all 4 failed. Customer was livid, right? We'd been with them for maybe a year and a half. This is one of our private times. And so, of course, all the people that were using these rulers in the specific department were up in arms. They were just like, does Transcat even know what they're doing? Are you kidding me? And they were convinced that we were not right about these calls, right? So I got involved. Somebody pulled me in at that level, and I just took a quick look at the previous cert and what we were doing, and it was just very evident to me right away, right? Look at the previous cert, and they're using a gauge block. That's it.
For a ruler?
For a ruler.
By eye.
Laying it on top, eyeballing the end of it, checking the other end, and what you know, for 20 years, that was nominal readings all the time.
God.
Oh.
The methodology was horrendous. The uncertainty is through the roof, right?
Mm.
So secondary problem, the tolerance on the one scale was 1/50th of 1 minor division, and on the other scale, 1/100th of a minor division. Now that is one accurate eyeball.
Yeah.
That's like people using the stopwatches.
Yes.
I'm sure, you know, and it's like time over distance, and it's like, you're
Yeah.
telling me your repeatability on a handheld stopwatch is perfect.
Exactly.
Okay, coach. You know, like.
So then I created just a real quick presentation with some pictures, and I got on with the quality people, and I said, okay, here's what's going on. Showed them our, single axis vision system that we use for calibrating rulers and tape measures, with the gradical lines or the crosshairs, with height and height scale built into it. Right, so it's got a very precise measurement for calibrating these types of instruments. Your TURs are anywhere from 2 to 1 or better, much better, maybe up to 10 to 1. And showed them pictures of that. Here's the setup on how we do this cal. Now here's what was happening in the past. And by the way, why in the world do you have this type of tolerance? The manufacturer's tolerance is plus or minus 1 division. Why are you using this? That's not the right tool for the job if you need that accurate. Well, of course, nobody in their manufacturing plant knew why those tolerances were on there, because that decision had been made years ago, and that person was long gone. Right?
Oh, yeah.
It wasn't documented. They don't know why. Documentation is critical, right? For those reasons.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
And then I said, well, let's go back to the process, see where you're using them and see if that's important. And they said, oh, we're just using it to measure the final packaging on the unit. What? You need that type of a tolerance for packaging? No, we don't need that. Okay, and we see that your method was absolutely right, and don't know why this was happening with the previous provider, but whatever. So we had that. They just immediately changed it to say calibrate to OEM specs. They all 4 passed. Imagine that. And got rid of that tight tolerance that didn't need to be there, and saved our image, thank goodness, to say, yeah, we know what we're doing.
Yeah.
It's failed for a reason, and a couple of different reasons, and there you go. And that's pretty strange that happens. But quite honestly, it's not like it happens a lot, but it happens more than you would expect it.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Just completely misguided measurement processes.
Yes. Those are where those quality blind spots come in, right? And nothing's being checked the way you think it is. You're entrusting a cal company to do their job correctly and know what they're doing. They're the subject matter expert for that. And this is the result you get. And it's hard for somebody who's not seasoned in knowing what to look for on a cert to know, oh my gosh, why are you using that standard? That doesn't make any sense at all. So that's how those things get missed.
Well, and I don't know, I mean, just from my experience, Howard, if you feel the same way being in third-party cal for so long, there's a kind of a distrust of cal anyway, just because it kind of seems like one of those processes, like,
because you don't see it, right? It's a piece of paper, and trust. That's what it comes down to.
And then all of a sudden, someone that their job relies on a measurement, it fails, and it's like, I have to do a kappa and all this, or whatever reports and all this, and yeah.
So there's 2 points to that. One, we do consulting for auto tolerance evaluations to help those manufacturing engineers who've never had any training in metrology and traceability and suitability of instruments, to help them really understand how to take the forensic mindset. Don't try to take the end result that you want and let that lead you to the result that is not going to impact product. Take the data and let it lead you to the end result to see if it impacted it.
Love it.
Again,
apply it correctly.
Going back to yesterday, or when we heard that previous podcast, looking for the result of the measurement before you get there.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's been, and of course, my production timeline, it's hard to fit things like this in there, but at some point, I want to do a free course for customers of Cal where it teaches them a lot of this stuff that can just be out there as just a little nugget for them to go and see some of that stuff. Because I noticed that becoming a technical manager, I'm like, why are so many people distrusting me? Like, you have no reason to not trust me, and I have to like explain where I come from, and it's like, no, I know what I'm talking about. I'm trying to help you. And I think it's one of those things. Yeah, there's an adversarial role there naturally.
And then the other problem is when you get into accreditation and customers say, okay, yes, I know that I do need to have the uncertainties of the measurements on every measurement on my certs. When they're doing comparisons between labs to see what their capabilities are, it can be confusing to look at different scopes and understand, what does this mean to me, right? So there's a learning opportunity there as well. Definitely a need for that training. And then all it takes with the accreditation process is to build a scope, an uncertainty budget that only has 2 or 3 components when it should have 4 or 5. And the lab that does that right gets penalized because their uncertainties are larger, right? And so now it looks like the lab who forgot those things is better, that they have better uncertainties. So it penalizes you for doing the right thing.
Right.
You should be doing that, and so should have those labs that didn't include those important components that are critical to the measurement, right?
And then you can start diving into accreditation bodies and how they go through that process.
Oh, yes.
It can get really.
Well, there's another podcast for you, Ryan.
I mean, I'm telling you. And that's the thing. We have to try, and maybe we'll do a combined podcast or something down the road again, to reconvene. Or I'd love to have each of you on individually talk very specifically about your careers. But I think you were right, Chuck, that we could go on for hours with this.
Oh yeah, I mean it's like there are so many things that we just touch the paintbrush on.
Right.
I have so much opinions on it that it would just take hours for it to cover. Like, for example, accreditation. I believe accreditation is becoming less valuable every day. We could talk 20 minutes wide to that. We seriously, I mean, you probably don't want Howard here because he could get in trouble for if I start talking about how I really feel about accreditation, he would get fired from Transcat.
I don't want to do that.
So, I mean, but you're right. There's just so much more to talk about. We can't cover it in 90 minutes. It just can't be done. And that's why we're going to cover a lot of that stuff, hopefully in a non-threatening manner. But it's interesting that
I like how you said hopefully a non-threatening manner.
Yeah, I mean, bring the truth to light and work on solutions to resolve the problems, right?
Exactly.
That's what we want to do. Yeah.
Do you guys have a planned launch date? Are you guys going to record one while you're together?
No.
If we wing it like this, then we'll start pretty soon. But I think we're going to do some planning first.
Probably the second quarter of the year. We have our first time.
Nice.
We got a lot of stuff. We have so much with business wise. We just don't have the time until April, May. We just don't have the time.
I hear that. Well, I definitely look forward to more announcements because I know, as Chuck alluded to, Sign and NAPT are going to be doing some stuff, and I see very strong futures for.
Why don't you tell us what we're going to do?
We're going to be combining forces on the certification side. So obviously there's Sign, the education, and then Sign Certified, the certification side. And level 1 has been out there for a few years, which is test-based, where you can take it remotely. But as we go into level 2, and in some cases level 3, there is a high need for us to certify someone, to see them do measurements. And in a lot of ways, combining that into a proficiency test makes a lot of sense, not only for those students, because in their career, that might be a perfect time for them to learn more about the proficiency testing, system and all that. But then also it can be helpful for towards their labs if they want to, right? Where they can utilize that proficiency test as one of their own.
And we're bringing back, we're going to start doing regional ILCs again. And we're going to work with Sign, and we're going to do some on-site training, where you're going to do the on-site training at the same time we do the regional testing.
Exactly.
We're really excited about that. We're going to put that together, hopefully starting for sure in 25, if not later this year. And that's going to be a really solid joint venture that we're really looking forward to starting again.
Yes. One of our biggest focuses from here on out is accessibility to those that aren't even in the industry yet. As we're talking today, might not even know the word metrology exists. They'll think you're trying to say meteorology, right? That's what they're thinking we're trying to say when we say metrology. So trying to get those people that aren't,
Yeah, those guys aren't very good at their jobs. They can't even pronounce their career correctly.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, I want to thank both of you for coming on. And again, what's the best way for people to reach out to you? No pressure, but is LinkedIn the best way if they want to chat?
Well, we're both on LinkedIn.
Absolutely.
Obviously, I have a very strong presence there. They can also contact directly. I mean, I think you probably put something up on a PowerPoint or something with our. I'm Ellis at proficiency.org. He's Howard at proficiency.org.
Correct.
That's the best way. Reach out to us, especially if you want to volunteer as a technical advisor. If you have any suggestions, good or bad, love to hear from you. If you want to donate money, send cash. We like
in an unmarked envelope to Chuck.
Well, cash is good. I mean, I'll take cash, but hey, it was a real pleasure. Hopefully that we're able
thank you so much for having us.
It's a pleasure to be part of your program. You are doing some really good things. We're looking forward to part 2. Tonight I'll listen to part 2. It came out today.
Yeah.
Can't wait to listen to it. You got some really good stuff going on.
I'm gonna go back and look at some of the other stuff too.
I listen to all your stuff. He's behind the schedule, Ryan. Don't invite him until he catches up and listens to all your podcasts.
Got it. All right. Noted.
Well, if there's anything we can do, let us know.
Great. Well, thank you both again. And thank you all for listening.